Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War 2.0 Commander Guide video. I am the player who plays as the King Under the Mountain, and today I'm going to be talking about my favourite commander in the game, Dain Ironfoot. Now, whether we like it or not with the way 2.0 has come across, Dain is undeniably, particularly good side, the best physical damage dealer there is in the game. Arguably, both sides, evil and good side, I would say he is actually the best physical damage dealer in the game. He can do amazing things. I feel I'm pretty lucky because I already had him quite heavily invested in. So I feel pretty good about life in regards to that. Today I'm going to talk about which skills to use with him. We're going to talk about the type of equipment to use with him. In fairness, it's not really hard to get it right with Dain, and we're going to focus on it being around about Respect 5. So starting from the beginning, we'll go for skills and skill order. So his skills are Ironfoot, which is, let's just max it out so we can see. At max level, 450% physical damage once to one enemy formation. Level 5, it does 30% chance to inflict stun on a target. And level 10, in addition, target cannot recover HP, which in the old version was handy, but as we know now, unless you're facing that sort of cavalry formation involving Imrahil and Denethor, or one of the two at least, you tend not to get much healing. The other R1 skill I don't really see anyone go into, and there is a reason behind that. After all, he is the person doing the damage, not his units. So the fact that attack of small units in 3 allied formations goes from 1.2 to 12 isn't exactly ideal for what you're trying to do with Dain. Don't get me wrong, it's still quite a decent skill, but it's not what you're doing with him really. Level 5, unit defense for dwarves plus 5. Level 10, unit attack plus 5. And that isn't actually subject to dwarves, which is quite interesting, but yeah, no one really uses that skill. Arguably his best skill, well, definitely his best skill, and probably one of the best damage dealing skills, if not the best damage dealing skill in the game, is Durin's Blood. And it's on a variety of commanders, the dwarf comps, but in particular with Dain, with him already having quite a decent base damage, it's the skill that hits the hardest. So the skill is he deals 700% physical damage to 1 to 2 formations. Level 5, an additional skill damage dealt plus 10% for 3 rounds, which is pretty incredible. And then at level 10, commander attack plus 5. Now, just for those who didn't actually know, scale damage is anything but the auto attack. So these trees are now classed as skills. So he basically, for 3 rounds after Durin's Blood hits in round 3, because it's a 2-round cooldown period, these skills that then go off also have a 10% increase to their damage. And I would argue as well, I think, I'd probably have to check a battle report, but I would think Durin's Blood in round 6 also picks this up for the extra 10% damage. The R5 skill, King Under the Mountain, deals 160% physical damage to 3 enemy formations once. At level 5, the physical damage dealt by the commander ignores 10% of the target's defense for 1 round, and at level 10, the next instance of damage is plus 10%. This in itself is quite important for a skill order for Dain if you're going to run him this way. This skill goes off every 2 rounds, again, because of how this works. 1 round cooldown, so you get it 5 times in the fight. As far as skill order goes, and this is where it depends which way round you want to build your Dain Ironfoot. Because I've got an absolute mass of points from him being quite a high respect level, I fill this tree here with King Under the Mountain. If you are going to build that way, you must skill King Under the Mountain first, because it's important when this lines up with Durin's Blood in round 6, you get that extra 10% skill damage. So if we were working on him being around about Respect 5, you could go for 1 or 2 builds. You could max this tree, then max Durin's Blood, obviously picking up that 10%, and then you'd probably have 2-3 points left over into Ironfoot. Arguably getting the chance to get it to level 5 is pretty important. I like the King Under the Mountain skill because it helps get rid of some White Council stacks. Arguably the better way of building Dain would be to build him in regards to filling Durin's Blood, filling Ironfoot, so that people technically can't recover that HP, and as well the actual max damage is pretty impressive from that skill. And then putting a few points that are left over in here, because you'd still be getting rid of White Council stacks, but not wasting too much energy and sort of points. I run him this way because he's a higher respect, so when he's at level 50, I will be able to fill this tree also. And I've just been doing some PvP, so that's kind of where he's sat. So the skill order is important with Dain. If you are going to max King Under the Mountain, make sure you do that before you max Durin's Blood, because you want that skill to line up. As for his relic, the Helm of the Mountain, I really like this relic, and I actually have it 3 refined because I'm pretty lucky like that. I wouldn't really advise upgrading the relics as in strengthening them at the moment, because I don't really think for what you're actually losing, you pick up that much extra sort of stats, really, I suppose. A bit of Commander HP is nice. The only one you're really looking for here is that, so you've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting the right one with some Commander attack. But if you have some decent gear, the likelihood is you don't really need that extra attack so much anyway, and all the others aren't really that much use. But the reason why this is one of the best uniques in the game, in my opinion, is Relentless Vigor. Now, even though this got really heavily nerfed when we came into 2.0, it's still incredible. And it stacks 0.5% damage each refinement. So, just to look at mine is at 2%. And it stacks 5 times, so every time that formation takes damage, he stacks 2% extra damage on top. So generally, inside the first 2 to 3 rounds, he has got that maxed out, and the extra damage is pretty incredible. I'll try and look at a report or two after I've sort of gone through some equipment, just so I can show you the kind of damage levels that you can achieve with Dain in general. Now, as you can see, I've got a complete set on him, which is Sharp Blade. I'll go into sets first because it probably makes more sense. So 3 of these items, I would argue, probably aren't best in slot items for Dain. However, by making this set, I get his attack to around about 200, so it's 195. And that 200 is kind of a sort of soft cap, so if you can get around that, it's quite a nice sweet spot for your damage commanders. So as for the sets, if I can just bring them up easily, that's probably the easiest way of doing it. The sets I think are most useful for damage commanders in general, but definitely for Dain, are Sharp Blade, Flay, Might, and I'm not a massive fan of Warcry, just because I think there's so much White Council around that even though it looks nice on paper, it's arguably not as effective as it should be. The other aggressive set I like on them, and particularly for people like Dain and Bjorn, is Perseverance, because you start stacking that damage pretty early on, to be honest, particularly mixed with his unique. So you're getting a lot of extra damage. If I could, I'd probably run a Perseverance set on Dain. If you want to go the other way and defend a little bit, so you can basically look down the route of the more troops that survive, the more alive Dain is in the fight, in effect. And if he gets through 10 rounds, the likelihood is you're maxing the amount of damage that he's going to do out. I'd be looking for something like a Fortitude or an Evasive Action and possibly a Divide and Conquer. I wouldn't necessarily go for Thick Armour. I'm not entirely sure that works out as well as some of the others as a percentage. As for some of the other ones, and just a bit of a rogue shout, agility is also quite nice. That extra plus 10 initiative will mean he goes quicker than most other damage dealers in a fight, so that could actually be quite useful. But at the moment, I'm all about just stacking damage. Speaking of his damage, the way physical damage dealers work is you want the maximum amount of damage here, because this is what your base modifier multiplies off. I'm not going to bore you with the maths, but the more damage you have, the more output on your attack. And this is the other multiplier for that, is your attack stat for physical damage. So you want these two stats, damage and attack, as high as you possibly can. So from your gear perspective, absolutely 100% the Axe of Khazad-dûm is the best in slot weapon for any physical damage dealer, but in particular Dain. It's got monsters with plus attack, it's got a load of extra damage, so that is definitely best in slot. For the other items for best in slot, I'll come back to talk about my gear set shortly. I will go to the chest and just bring it up, because it's probably the easiest. And I will run through gold options first, but I'll also go through the purples after, as I appreciate that I'm quite fortunate with the gear that I've got on Dain in this account. So your best in-slot item in the gold section for weaponry is the Axe of Kaz of Doom. Other great options are the black bow, which again gives lots of attack and lots of commander damage. If you are feeling quite whaley and you've got a lot of it, the blazing tongue's pretty good. You get a lot of plus attack. It's also helpful if you're sharing gear with Gimli, because it helps him get over the 50 focus needed to get pursuit if you've got his unique. But also, again, it's got a lot of damage. And the other, which I know is an interesting option, is the Sandclaw, because you get some plus attack, you also get some initiative, so there's a chance that you will hit before some other people in combat. There are a couple of other smaller options where you could use the Cruel Hooks, for example, or you could even use the Hammer of Moria, but again, they're not much plus attack, and it's actually just more commander defense, which at the moment doesn't seem too important in the meta. Great piece of equipment for Falgin, however, if you are running him as part of a squad. So that's pretty much it for weapons. If you're talking genuinely best in slot items for chess pieces, you were talking the Berserker's Raiment, as it gives the most plus attack with a decent amount of HP and a little bit of commander initiative, which is pretty nice at the moment in the game. Again, gets you to go before potentially another Dain or a Gimli or whatever it might be. As a lot of people are running physical damage dealers in the meta right now, or Shadow if you play an evil side, I guess. Option 2 is probably the Warborn Battleplate. Not as much attack, a lot of commander defense and a little bit more HP. I quite like the Warborn Battleplate. I run it on Bjorn, but I do switch it occasionally onto Dain. Option 3, Golden Skin. Again, plus attack, a little bit of defense and some unit of defense, which is quite nice. The longer you stay alive, the better it is for Dain, because he's not taking the hits as much himself, and you can do more damage throughout the fight. Again, a little bit of focus on this piece if you're sharing gear with Gimli in another formation, for example. And then the other piece that is a little bit interesting, which I know some people use, and I wouldn't recommend it above some of the others, but again, is the Massive Breastplate, where you get a little bit of unit defense, which is quite nice. You get a little bit of commander attack, which is also quite nice, but the HP on this one's a little bit lower. If we're talking about accessories, because I don't know why it seems to go across into accessories next, the absolute best in slot is the Palantir of Orthanc. Again, it's commander damage, commander attack. It actually goes up to 48. Remember, all these stats scale times 3 if you ever want to just basically work out where they are without having to fully strengthen them. And there's a little bit of commander focus, again, quite nice if you're sharing with Gimli. Palantir is definitely the best in slot item for any physical damage dealing commander. The second best is the Drums of Barad-dûr. I'm not sure, at time I'm creating this, I'm not sure if it's actually broken the Drums of Barad-dûr a little bit. This plus 3 to 5 commander damage only, once you refine it once, it actually stays the same. It only starts going up from refinement 2. Again, 36 attacks, very nice for your damage dealer, and a little bit of focus if you are sharing with, say, a Gimli again for that pursuit. So there's the two probably best options by a long way. I've also seen some people use the Box of Knowledge, as it's got a little bit of attack, but you have to bear in mind that your weapon and your accessory are the only two pieces in the game which you can actually get a damage stat from here, which helps create your physical damage and increases it. So I would recommend one of those two pieces more than the rest, just for that reason. Again, arguably, if you're sharing it with a Gimli, you may go for something like a Signet of the Barrow, so you get that focus and you get a little bit of initiative. But realistically, the first two are your best in slot items by a long way. As for your headpiece or helmet, whatever you want to call it these days, I don't really want to feel like I should call the Forest a helmet, as I don't see it as a helmet. That's a different story. I suppose that's more of a mask as well, hence why it's called Berserker. Anyway, Casca Pride is your absolute best in slot. Again, decent HP, lots of commander attack, scales up to 48, massively helps. Second best is a little bit of a tricky one, to be honest. I would probably argue that the Chieftain's Gaze is pretty good, because you get some command, which will obviously mean your army takes a little bit less damage, and you get quite a lot of attack. You also get some unit defense in this, which is quite nice. I've seen some people run the Harad Cask, again, for some command, so you get some damage mitigation from that, and so you get a lot of unit defense. The piece I'm actually running at the moment is I am running the Cask of Submerged Isle, which again has decent command for a helmet. So again, you're taking a little bit less damage. Ignore the unit attack. I'm just focusing on the unit defense on this one as it keeps my troops alive longer, and I've found some decent results with that, to be honest. So you've got choices with Dain. You can either stack a little bit of unit defense on him, just so your army stays alive a little bit longer and you get through the fight easier with 10 rounds. Or you stack attack, you stack damage, and you basically just try and obliterate anyone faster than they try and hit you. As for purples, for physical damage dealers, there's probably only a couple in each slot. There's most, so I'll just run through them very quickly. The absolute best in slot is the Battle Axe, with decent damage, decent commander attack, and a little bit of unit defense. The other is arguably the Easterling Spear, which you get a little bit of plus attack and some unit attack, which is a little bit useless really on what you're trying to do, but there isn't really masses of options which suit. They're all sort of quite minimal attack, so realistically this is your only true option for a purple item for me as far as weaponry goes. Chestplate, I would argue this is the only one from 2.0 gear. Bear in mind, I'm not going to talk about 1.0 gear because I'd like to make this accessible to everyone. Yes, there are some purple pieces for physical damage dealers, which are great from 1.0 gear, but not everyone's got access to them, so I'm trying to make it a little bit comparable for everyone. The Scale Mail is your best in slot item here, as you get quite a decent amount of commander attack from it. As for accessories, it is actually the Bone Talisman, because you get quite a lot of plus attack and some plus defense. The Hiflane isn't terrible, but again, it's not a great deal. It's nowhere near comparable when it scales up and you've strengthened it. And as for helmets, again, there's only really one proper option. That's the full helmet, which gives you a little bit of unit defense and 18 of attack when fully strengthened. So that's your purple items. There are obviously blue options as well, but I'm trying to make it in a way that, even, to be honest, I think purples are now accessible to most people, particularly if they've been playing the game for a while. So coming back to my theory behind what I did with mine, there is kind of a soft cap around 200 for attack where it starts to get diminishing returns. Again, I don't really want to bore anyone with maths. If anyone wants to argue that fact with me, they're very welcome to. So it's about 195 attack. I'd like to get that over 200 if I can, but I will probably try and strengthen the relic at some stage and just get that +6 attack. Hopefully I'll get it on first roll, but you just never know with these things. Thanks to the devs for unlocking the uniques, by the way, it's allowed me to do this. So I'm trying to work on sharing gear between two sets of commanders in a non-roleplay environment in the future, so I have built my gear around that. So these are not the best in slot items, for example, and I do have some best in slot items, but I do not have the sharp blade set. So I've took advantage of the sharp blade set here, and I will share this set with Gimli to make sure I've got 50 focus to get me the pursuit. And I'm using that from the golden skin with +18, and I'm using it from the Drum to Barad-dûr with +18 again. I really like this helmet, arguably more so than the Cask of Pride. Now, even though the Cask of Pride has got +48 attack, I really like this unit defense. And what that unit defense has allowed me to do in this combination is it's allowed me to make Dain last 10 rounds a lot more than what he used to, and it's meant that if he's hit multiple armies, I've seen better results. So if I just pull up, say, a couple of reports from today, I'm probably going to lose this ruin soon. I don't think I've got much protection left. 11 minutes. So if I look at reports from today, for example, he goes through this army and he's still got half health and he's still got some rams left, but he's done 140,000 damage just by surviving the fight. I've then hit a secondary army and he has died during the secondary army, and I've done 64,000 damage with him. But ultimately, in the past, if I didn't have that unit defense, potentially, I wouldn't have lived that long into the second fight, and I wouldn't see this sort of result whereby I would say it's quite favourable. See if I can find another report from earlier on which sort of shows a similar thing. So yeah, again, it's a similar kind of thing. I wasn't full here either, so he's took a little bit of damage, but my units have survived and wiped the army. and then I've hit a second army and nearly wiped that too, with him doing 173,000 damage in the second fight, because those units are surviving longer. So it's just really food for thought. You can just stack damage and attack on him, but I also think some unit defense in particular is really important. Now his command stat isn't great, but I am getting 12% damage received from my army as a negative there, so that's quite nice also. As for formations, he currently sits in a formation with Gandalf the White, Bjorn and Galadriel. Long term, Galadriel won't be in this formation. As you can see, Bjorn, I've basically gone down the route of stacking attack for him. But yeah, that's the formation currently. The White Council allows Dain to basically get to work. And that's kind of how I'm running it at this stage. And with that, that's pretty much everything I have to offer on this guide. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, leave some questions, comments, whatever you want on it. I'll keep trying to do these guides. And thanks for listening and watching, and particularly while everything's very new. If in doubt, always follow your nose.